Hey everyone, this is Nikachu, and we are here for Getting Good Episode 5, Playing the Deck That Speaks to You. So what do I mean by playing the deck that speaks to you? I mean the deck that you perform with the best, based on your level of playing skill and your style. And we're going to go through both of those in this video. And finding those out is going to require some experience. You had to have played a decent chunk of Magic to know where you stand as a player. And you also had to have played with a variety of decks to find out exactly what suits you the best. So we're going to talk about style. And style is very important in all games, depending on your sort of attitude towards games, based on how you understand the game, how you understand the rules. Style is going to have a very big impact on what type of deck that you're going to want to pick up. Remember, we're not going to be talking about what you find the most fun, the most enjoyable. We're talking about what's the best deck that will help you perform the best in a tournament, the deck that you can win with the most. So let's talk about the four pinnacle types of decks that you can play in Magic. Are you an aggro player? Do you like to get out really quickly in the beginning of the game and start putting your opponent's life total down and try to get ahead just enough that you can close out the game before they can catch up? Then maybe you're an aggro player. The disadvantages to being an aggro player is you got to recognize the window of opportunity that is slamming shut, because usually you don't have a very good late game, but it all depends. Are you a control player? Do you like to take control of the game? Do you want to manage resources and your life total in such a manner that you don't let your opponent take away the game from you? Are you a combo player? Do you just like to put the pieces of the puzzle together and try to assemble your combo and then win the game on the spot in maybe a fancy but effective way? And of course, there's also mid-range decks. Do you not, perhaps you don't want to get out ahead really quickly, but eventually, you put some big creatures in play and then just very comfortably swing an attack for the win. There's also different colors in Magic and different color combinations. Blue, red, white, green, black, artifact. Now we've got colorless in the form of Eldrazi, but all of those things have an influence on you. I personally am a blue player. I will play blue as often as I can, and actually, I had a lot of success with Mono Blue Devotion and Standard when it was around. I have a lot of success with Merfolk in Modern. I also had a lot of success with Delver decks and Merfolk in Legacy. I am a blue player. I stick to blue as much as possible, and I play these sort of blue-oriented decks. And so you got to find out, what color fits you. Which of these colors speak to you the most? Do you like red because of the burn spells that can kill your opponent's creatures or sling them right directly at their face? Do you like green because the creatures are so robust and strong? Do you like black for the removal? Do you like white for the utility creatures? Or do you like blue because of the counter spells and the controlling aspects of that color? You have to figure out all those things and find out what works for you the best, because they're all different. Some colors are easier to play than others. Some color combinations play easier than others. Now, style, very important. I mean, there are a lot of examples out there where I think you can see the success of style. Take Reed Duke, for example. I think he's played a lot of decks. He's played Burn. He's played Soul Sisters. He's played He's played Elves. He's played a wide range of different type of decks in competitive Magic. But the archetype, the color pie that he's had the most success with, by far and large, is just black-green. Jund, Sultai, maybe Abzan, for sure The Rock. He's gone deep and won tournaments and made more top 8s with Black Green X than anything else. Another great example is Craig Wesco. This guy plays White Weenie whenever he can. He's won Pro Tours with White Weenie. He's made top 8s in Legacy and Modern tournaments with Modern Hate Bears and Legacy Death and Taxes. He sticks, he knows his style, he knows his color pie, and he loves it, and he has a lot of success with that color. How you understand the game should be how you choose your style. So now we'll move to play skills. So maybe you figured out if you're an aggro player, mid-range player, control player, or combo player. Now what deck do you choose? And a lot is going to have to do with play skill. There may be other factors, but I think one of the most important factors that makes a deck more difficult than another one is the decision tree of options. A deck that has a lot of decisions is very difficult to play because you have to know, oh, do I play this card over that card? Or should I play this now or later? Whereas a deck that doesn't have a lot of decisions is a lot easier to play. And decks that do not have a whole lot of decisions are usually the ones with a lot of cards that are redundant. Cards that do basically the same thing as another card. So if you have a bunch of cards that basically do the same thing, so at any given time you have far less options available to you, and you're far less likely to make a big mistake. Whereas when you have a deck with a lot of options, then your frequency of making a mistake is very, very high, because at any given point there is probably one or two really good moves to make, and out of like 10 options, if there's only 2 good ones and 8 bad ones, then the frequency of finding the bad one is just much higher. So let's start with aggro decks. I think we can look at Burn versus Affinity. Burn, pretty easy deck to play. A lot of redundant cards, all the burn spells basically do the same thing. They just shoot the opponent for damage. Some of them can attack the creatures, so that gives it a little bit of complexity, but more or less the whole deck is redundant. It just has a few creatures you put on the battlefield, swing and attack. Nothing really complicated to do game-wise. Like, you just have to remember some triggers and that's about it. No, Affinity I think actually is a really complicated deck because it's got a lot of decisions. Like with Arcbound Ravager, it just opens up a can of worms. What do you sacrifice? How many things do you sacrifice? When would you want to sacrifice? And when do you go in for the kill? Cranial Plating also creates some complexity. You want to know what creatures you attach this to, how much mana do you have available to equipping things now. When do you even want to play the Cranial Plating? Because that is like a key bomb card in the deck. If you play it at the wrong time, maybe your opponent is going to counterspell it or something. And of course, it also has all the man lands. You have to manage what lands you attack with when you just activate it to have artifact count on the board. It's got a lot of decisions, so many decisions, and maybe game one, some random putts can win the game, but games 2 and 3 you gotta play squeaky clean and very good tight Magic, because your opponent is bringing in super big bombs in against you, and you need to be able to beat those bombs in order to stay ahead with Affinity. The easier deck to play is Burn, but at the same time, it might be the best deck to play for your level of skill, whereas I think Affinity, there's a lot of people that play Affinity, but I don't see all those people make day 2 at a Grand Prix. Now let's look at maybe mid-range between Eldrazi and I think Jund. And maybe I might be wrongly assuming this, but I think Eldrazi is the easier deck to play. It has just really robust, strong creatures, not a lot of decisions to make, not a lot of removal either. Maybe the hardest decision you have is with Ancient Stirrings. Whereas with Jund is a sort of a clunky deck. It's a 50% deck. You need to really know your opponent's deck and know everything that's in there, because you've got to save the right removal spells for the right creatures. Do you terminate this thing right now, or do you Kolaghan's Command it? Jund is not particularly complicated, but at the same time, you have to manage your removal spells properly, knowing when to play your removal spells out of mana efficiency, or saving those removal spells for key creatures you can't kill with the rest of your removal spells. Now let's look at Control. Control On the surface, it looks extremely complicated, and it is. You need to know how to manage your life total and manage your removal spells, manage your counter spells, manage Snapcaster mages, know how to Serum Visions properly, and that's why I put Grixis control decks, or any of those blue-red control decks really are on the complicated side of the control deck spectrum. But then there's Tron. Tron sometimes is looked at like a combo deck in a lot of people's eyes. Oh, you're trying to assemble the Tron with the lands, but really this is a control deck. I mean, it even plays spot removal in the green, white, and green, black versions. It plays Pyroclasm and Fire Spout, but really it has a lot of control elements, including Ugin and Oblivion Stone, Karn. There's a lot of controlling elements in Tron. So I would say, and it's got a lot of redundant cards. A lot of redundant cards in Tron. There's just a lot of Tron lands, and then cards to find the Tron lands, and then basically anything that you can put out with 7 or 8 mana is a bomb, and you just win. So I would put that on the easier, like that would be the easier version of a control deck to play, and I would definitely put that in the hands of someone who would want to play control, but maybe isn't skilled enough to play the blue-red control decks. And then there's combo decks. Combo decks can either be very easy to play or very complicated to play. On the easier side, we've got Infect, and we've got like Red Green Valakut. For Infect, like once again, a lot of redundant cards, just like a X number of Infect creatures and then a bunch of pump spells, and not too much or other than that. The deck also is very powerful. Even a complete ranked noob who is not playing around removal is going to win a ton of games with Infect. I cannot believe how many times I have lost to just like very new players who are just picking up Infect, and they just didn't play around any removal spells, but they slaughtered me because the deck is just that powerful. And Red Green Valakut is a very strong combo deck again, but a lot of redundancy. Like it's just a bunch of lands and cards that look for lands before you play your kill condition, like Farseek and Sakura Tribe Elder. Basically the same card. Not a lot of decisions to be made, and still a very powerful combo deck. Whereas if you look like Amulet Titan and Storm, Amulet Titan is a very complicated combo deck. Maybe even after you learn all the inner workings, it's still complex because the lines of play that you need to take in order to win are not so. It's not so simple. Like you just play this creature and then you win, or play this card and you win. There's still a lot of work you have to do. But there's a lot of little dinky little things that you need to know which lands you have to search up, which cards you have to get with Teleria West. Like Teleria West is a tutor for anything in your deck, and tutors make decks more complicated because it gives you more options. You need to know how your triggers work, etc. So that's on the more complicated side. Storm is also very complicated. You need to know when to go off. You need to keep track of Storm. You need to keep track of your mana. You need to figure out if you can go off and you'll have enough mana for it, and the probabilities of you whiffing or not whiffing. So Storm is definitely on the more complicated side. And those are just a few examples, and that's not to say that you can't eventually make your way to the more complicated decks, but you need to start somewhere. If you're starting off with the complicated deck and you have no success in Magic, then move to something that will give you some success, and then you can slowly work your way to something else. So yeah, I want you to play the deck that speaks to you based on your style and also your level of playing skill. And we're going to finish this off with a nice little story about Andrew Day 2 Dryden. So we're on the channel, we talked about is he going to play Burn or is he going to play Merfolk for Grand Prix Vancouver? And my Twitter feed, of course, said it's slam dunk, you have to play Merfolk. But I convinced him to play Burn, and for a very good reason, because the way he's an aggro player. Oh, he is such an aggro player. He loves playing aggro decks. He plays Affinity, he plays Burn, and he plays Merfolk. But here's the thing. I think people are really deceived to believe that Merfolk is an aggro deck. I mean, at the very least, it's a tempo deck. But I personally look at Merfolk like a mid-range pseudo control deck. I have it in the mid-range factory, and if people are trying to play Merfolk as an aggro deck, I think they're going to be horribly disappointed. But Day 2 Dryden and I, we correspond back and forth all the time. And he tells me, oh yeah, I went 3-2 in a modern league with Burn. He's telling me about his Burn results. Oh yeah, I just went 4-1. I just went 4-1 again. I went 3-2. Oh, I went 2-3, but then I went 4-1. And he's got some real success with the deck. And then over the last few weeks, he's like, oh, do you want to try Merfolk out again? Oh, I went like 2-3. Oh, I went 1-4. Oh my god, I'm so lucky at 0-4. Like, clearly, one of these decks is working for him, and one of them is not. And even at our local game store, I was observing how he was playing and with Merfolk, and I was just writing down pages and pages of these catastrophic blunders that he was making with the Merfolk deck. And I'm telling you, I told Day 2 Dryden, you gotta play Burn. This deck speaks to you. The way you understand Magic, that is how you have to play Magic, and you have to stick with the Burn deck. Because I've observed him play Burn as well, and he plays that so much better. Like, he makes some mistakes, but they're not big mistakes. They're not game-ending mistakes. And we can see where the results are. His results are with Burn and not with Merfolk. At some point, you have to look at the scoreboard and see what decks are working and what's not. So anyway, as usual, like, share, comment, and subscribe. Thanks to all my patrons supporting me on Patreon. This has been Nikachu talking about choosing the deck that speaks to you.